there's often this intuition that especially technologist people have about what the particular aim of contract law is. So in the very beginning of me writing about the law of cyberspace, somebody from MIT, I won't name any names, it wasn't Andy, showed up at the Harvard Law School and said, I've solved the problem of contract law. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I have a system that will eliminate risks in contracts. And he was really disappointed when I said, you know, the objective of contract law is not to eliminate risks. The objective of contract law is just to allocate risk, to figure out who has the risk. So each of us can figure out what to do in light of the risk. So if I say I will buy 10,000 bushels of corn from you at $3.50 a bushel, turns out that is the price of corn right now. He always looks up things on the internet. I figure I should look it up before I present it. So $3.50 is the price of a bushel of corn right now, delivered September 1. What that's basically doing is it's allocating the risk of the price of corn. So if you're a farmer and you don't want to face the risk the price of corn is going to fall to $3, you enter into this contract. If you're a buyer, you accept this contract, but if the price of corn falls to $3, well, you're out of luck. So the point is it reallocates the price of price change, reallocates the risk of price change, also reallocates the risk of delivery. So if I've got all this corn, I can place it in a certain place to shift the risk of delivery so that, once again, I use the contract to shift my risk of storage or my risk of delivery and you on the other side. So the objective of contract law, number one, is risk allocation, number one. But the allocation matters only if, say only if for me, only if there's a system to process the breach of a contract. Only if you've got a technology, let's say, for processing the breach. So if I have a contract with you of 10,000 bushels of corn, $3.50 on September 1st, and you don't deliver, that's a breach. My risk has only been reallocated if there's some way for me to enforce the contract at that point. So it requires the system. And the system we ordinarily take for granted is a legal system. And I say we take it for granted, meaning some people can take it for granted, like people in well-developed legal contexts. But that's also to emphasize other people can't take it for granted. So for example, people in developing worlds. They can't take the legal system for granted. They can't assume that if the contract's breached, they can go into a court and say, enforce the contract or give me damages. Or if you've got a contract between somebody in Rwanda and somebody in Alaska, then there too, there's a question of whether we've got sufficient infrastructure to develop. So the point I want to emphasize at the end of this little intervention is to suggest that this fact, that it takes for granted the system of enforcement, shows the real potential benefit of this class of contracting devices. Because if we think about this as a representation of a well-developed legal system, and we think of first world countries as having those, and we compare like third world or developing world countries which don't have these well-developed legal systems, you might say that first world countries are better off relative to third world countries because they have the legal infrastructure to enable this risk allocation that will enable all sorts of market transactions to happen, which otherwise wouldn't happen. But if we imagine infrastructure like blockchain-like infrastructures or Ethereum infrastructures to enter the mix, providing a technical infrastructure that doesn't require judges and lawyers, but just requires code, then that can substitute for the legal infrastructure, provide the infrastructure the contract needs at a much lower cost, and thereby enable people to contract who otherwise wouldn't rationally contract because they could never count on the infrastructure of the legal system to deliver what they need. OK, so the point is, this picture is trying to say that the key value, one key value of these technologies is that they will be a substitute for a failed legal system or a legal system that's not yet developed. They will provide the infrastructure of a legal system.